All right, welcome everyone to the Tucson Amateur Astronomy Association virtual moon exploration. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's the familiar face of the moon that we see. You can see probably three prominent features here. I'm just going to move my cursor around so you'll see kind of a little arrow. But here's some dark areas. We call these marias, which is Latin for seas. So we have lots of dark areas around here. They're kind of lower elevation, and I'll talk to you in just a minute about how they formed. We also have some of the higher elevations. These are called the Lunar Highlands, and so this is slightly elevated. And then as you can see, as you look around the moon, you see lots and lots of craters. Some bright ones, some big ones, small ones, because both the moon and the Earth and all the planets, especially the inner planets, went through a lot of asteroid impacts in their early formation. So those are kind of the main features that you see. We're going to do a little drawing now. All right, so let's start with the Lunar Poodle. So if you want to draw along, that's fine. If not, just follow me along. Let's see if this is, yeah, it's still pretty big, that's all right. So we're going to follow along here. We're going to draw around this Maria, down here. This is one of the legs of the poodle. Come back up here. We're going to come back down here. Got a little close there. Come back up here. Come around here. And then this is his little fluff ball tail. So it's kind of like a groomed poodle. So here's the face, or the head, the body, and the legs, and the tail back here. So we call that the Lunar Poodle. So that's one of them. All right, the other one we're going to do is the man on the moon. So we're going to start over here, and we're going to just kind of do a circle around this large mare. And we're going to come over here and do one through the middle of the poodle. Bet you can guess those are probably the eyes. Down here, around this dark area, and down around here, and back up here. And that would be the nose. And then down here, kind of go around these guys, and that would be the mouth. So it's not quite as prominent as the poodle is, but that's considered the face of the man in the moon. You got two bright eyes, the nose, and the mouth. All right, and then the last one we're going to do is the lady in the moon. So we're going to start up here, kind of go around here and down around here, come back up and around here. All right, this one I'm going to draw entirely, and then we'll see if you can maybe take a guess at kind of what's what on here. I'm going down this way, kind of down in here, back and around here, down here, on this edge, and down here. So this is kind of a profile shot. So yeah, this is the hair flowing here. You've got the brow and the nose sticking out here, and the mouth, put maybe like that. Chin, come on down here. And so that's called the lady on the moon. Now, again, not quite as prominent as the man on the moon was, but still pretty good. So those are the three drawings we're going to do. Clear them out. And now let's take a little look at where the landings were. All right, so we'll start with Apollo 11. So if you remember, the poodle was over here. So Apollo 11 is pretty easy to find because it was right at the edge of the Sea of Tranquility. And this is Tranquility right here. So if you think about where his belly button would be, right down here, that is where Apollo 11 landed. So it's right at the edge of the Sea of Tranquility. And if you've seen the recordings or watched the landing live, you know, if if you're some of the older folks, then you probably heard them once they landed, they called, you know, Houston Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. So the lander was called Tranquility Base because it was on the edge of the Sea of Tranquility. All right, so that is Apollo 11. Now we're going to come over here just a little bit below Kepler's crater, kind of right down in here, right about here, is where Apollo 12 landed. Now Apollo 11 did not spend very much time on the moon. They only spent maybe a couple of hours walking around and collecting some moon rocks, and not very long at all just on the surface, because it was probably more of a proof of concept to make sure they could land, they could get out and walk around and do all the things they needed to do. With each subsequent landing, the duration got longer and longer. So Apollo 11 spent a little bit, or Apollo 12 spent a little bit more time. They were also down in the mares, in the ocean of storms down here. So these guys, both these two were down in the lower levels to try to, you know, take a look at the basalt, the lava kinds of rocks and things like that. Apollo 13, as most of you know, unfortunately didn't make it to the moon, but everybody survived fine. What happened is that they had an issue about 2/3 of the way to the moon. And so they had to give up the moon. And so they used a trajectory going around the moon to slingshot them back to Earth to save time to get them back to Earth. So they were not able to land on the moon. So the next one, and Apollo 11 was July 20th in 1969, and Apollo 12 was November 19th of the same year. Apollo 13 had launched on April 11th in 1970 and was landed back in the ocean on Earth on April 17th. Apollo 14 was kind of right down in, let's see, let me make sure I get it. And kind of right down in this area right in here. That was Apollo 14. They were on what's called the Frau Moro, so I think it was slightly elevated. It was a different formation on the surface of the moon. They landed in February of 1971. And then Apollos 15, 16, and 17, the last three, spent much longer time on the moon because they brought with them a rover. And so they were actually able to drive around and explore the different, a lot further away from the landing site. So Apollo 15 was up in this area, right about here. And it was in July of 1971. Apollo 16 was over in this highland. So these guys were doing the higher elevations. This is Apollo 16 here. That was in April of 1972. So almost a year between Apollo 15 and Apollo 16. And then Apollo 17 was December of 72. And they are right up in here in the neck area of the Lunar Poodle. So they were actually in kind of right at the edge of the two of them. So those were the Apollo landings, and I'm just gonna click over to the next slide.
Hey, Jim?
Yeah.
Before you click over, we got a question about the rabbit in the moon. And if you could point out the body of the Lunar Poodle,
Okay.
not his tail, just the body, that's the Chinese rabbit upside down, the two long parts, down to the Sea of Nectars and down to the Sea of Fertility, that's his ears. And the top part of what would be the head, the Sea of Serenity, would be the rabbit's body, head.
So this is
and there's the rabbit.
Okay.
That's the lunar rabbit, and it's called Yutu in Chinese culture.
So there again is just kind of a summary of the Apollo landings in relation to the craters.